Ha 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 ha! Weekly Dartscast, the best darts podcast going. If you guys like your podcasts and you like your darts, then make sure you listen to the Weekly Dartscast. They're the purists podcast. If you listen to Alex and Burton, they talk about everything. They talk to the pros, they talk to the pros on the tour, the old BDO, they talk to management, they talk to darts manufacturers, proper interesting stuff, so give them a listen.
Hello and welcome to the Weekly Dartscast. We're back 2 episodes in 2 days for you guys. Call it a late Christmas present from us to you. I'm Alex Moss, and with me as always, darts statistician Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
Can't say I'm doing all that well. Finally, after nearly 2 years, COVID finally struck, but I'm on the route to recovery, feeling a lot better today than I was yesterday. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing good, thank you, and glad to hear on the mend. Hopefully you can't pass it via the airwaves on this Skype call that we're on, but I've just had a good afternoon at the football, so good to be back and good to be chatting to you again. And we promised you guys we'd bring you a Q School preview, and when you guys are listening to this, Q School starts today. We've got 650 plus players heading to either Milton Keynes or Niedenhausen for this year's Q School. But can this year's edition possibly top the drama of last year's?
It definitely can. And if you look at, you go back 2 years ago, the biggest drama on the final day was, would Lisa Ashton win her tour card? And when she went out early on the final day, it looked like the answer was going to be no, but a few results went her way and she ended up winning a tour card. And she's now back there in the second stage of Q School this year. She's not the only person who all eyes will be on if she has a chance to win a tour card on the final day. We'll get obviously to Fallon Sherrick in a bit, but a lot of players could end up in that position. And that's where a lot of that drama comes from. Either the players who are sitting, waiting to find out, will they win a tour card? Will results go their way after crashing out on the final day? Or players who, like last year, don't have the points they need, but can win through and get that tour card. And maybe you're playing a match where at the end of the day, it's either they win to get a tour card or they lose and someone who's home and thinking they've lost their chance will get it. We won't know until it happens. Q School will almost always have drama. It'll be very rare where there's not that drama. We could also go back, not 2 years ago, but 3 years ago to Glenn Durrant, who had to survive 3 mismatched darts, 3 in hand at tops from Matthew Denon, a former tour card holder, in order for him to win that match and eventually get his tour card. So will it top? Who knows? But there will be drama. There will be intrigue. Even if Fallon Sherrick goes out at the first stage, which I don't think will happen, but you never know. The draws could go against her or she might not have her best game. But regardless of whether it's her, whether it's Lisa, whether it's Matthew Dennett again or someone random, there will be drama and it will be exciting. And yeah, I think it might just top because this field, it gets better every year. We say it every year. And if you look at just the number of former world champions, you'll be listening to one of them later, Jelle Klaasen, and former major champions who will be here, some of whom we'll be discussing as we go into our tips. There's a bunch of all-time greats at this event as well. I think, yeah, there's every chance it will top last year in terms of drama, or at the very least come pretty darn close.
Yeah, it definitely has the potential. And I was chatting to our colleague Matthew Kiernan last week and we were chatting about Q School, and I said it's probably the most exciting darts event where you don't actually see the darts going the board, because we're all going to be hooked on Dart Connect for the next 7 days, following the action, following the scores going, and it is such a dramatic event to follow. And I was just looking back to last year's event where we had Raymond van Barneveld come back after his 12 months off, and we saw him get that tour card on the final day. There was drama with him, wasn't there? He went out early on the 3rd day of the final stage, managed to do enough to get the tour card on the final day, and he said afterwards that was the hardest tournament of his life. And this is someone that's won a world championship 5 times, so that says a lot about how hard and how difficult it was for him to come back from retirement, come through Q School and get that tour card. And not just Barney, but you look over to the UK Q School last year, you had Danny Baggish, made it hard work for himself in the first stage. Last year was the first time that we saw the Q School split between the 2 stages, and he went into the first stage, had to get through on the final day of that first stage to get through to the final stage where the tour cards become available. And going into the final day of the final stage, he was on 0 points, and he had a massive run on that final day needed one leg in the final, got two legs to get the tour card, and we had that American representation back on the tour. And another player as well, the player that beat him in the final, Scott Mitchell, went into the final day with only 1 point to his name and went all the way on that final day and won his tour card outright. So there is drama every year, and you touched on it the previous year as well with Glenn Durrant and Lisa Ashton as well. There's always big names that enter this Q School, regardless of where they are in their career. It's always exciting to follow them. And you look to this year, of course, we're going to come on to talk about it more in detail in a moment. Fallon Sherrock is the one that everyone's got their eye on. And then you've also got, former major winners, former world champions, John Park, Robert Thornton, players that have dropped off the tour, the likes of Scott Waits, Jelle Klaasen, Darren Webster, and then the youngsters coming through, Leighton Bennett and Fabian Schmutzler, two 16-year-olds who are now eligible to play in Q School. So wherever you look, there's going to be some stories to follow. And yeah, for the next 7 days, we're going to see some big names get their tour cards. We're going to see some miss out. And excitingly as well, we're going to see some names that we've not heard too much from before get their tour card and have that chance for the next 2 years to play against the world's best week in, week out.
And of course, the name on everyone's lips entering Q School since Mark Walsh and Co-Stomp didn't enter is Fallon Sherrock. Will she bring her stage game to Milton Keynes and win herself a tour card?
This is the big question. And not many bookmakers are offering a market for Q School because it can be such a lottery. As I just said on the last question, we see names that we expect to come through miss out. And Sky Bet, they have offered a market for it. And as we always say, please gamble responsibly. But with Fallon Sherrock, a day before it starts, when we're recording this, she's 8 to 15 on. So just under 1 to 2 on to get that tour card. So no pressure is there. And we spoke about it on the last show with the delay in the Premier League announcement. A lot of people on social media saying that the PDC are waiting to see if Fallon Sherrock gets that tour card. And whether that's right or wrong, we don't know the answer to that. I hope it's not anyway. I hope there's not that extra pressure on her shoulders, because it's going to be a big week for her, isn't it, to get that tour card. And we've seen her go to Q School for the last 3 years. She's not really got close in any of the years so far. Is she a better player now than she's ever been? I think she is. I think she's improved year on year. But as far as Q School goes, she's not been able to crack it yet. And we've seen her go on to some of the biggest stages, one of the biggest, the Grand Slam, the biggest, the World Championship, and get results. Not the case with the World Championship just gone, but the Grand Slam last year, the World Series, we've seen her go up against the world's best, push them, and in some cases beat them as well. But it's whether she can bring that stage game to the Q School stage, which isn't on a stage, it's on the floor, but it's probably the biggest stage, the biggest hurdle that she's now got to overcome to really progress her career, because for her to get a tour card would be huge. And for the next 2 years, there would be a lot of opportunities come her way, Premier League or not. There will be a lot of opportunities for her to really progress her game and make darts bigger as well, you've got to say, because a lot of eyes are always on her, from casual darts fans, from hardcore darts fans, any darts fans, anyone with an interest in darts. When they see Fallon Sherrock playing, they want to watch her. So can she do it? I think she can. And we saw 2 years ago, we just touched on it with Lisa Ashton winning her tour card. She averaged, I think, just over 85 for the Q School that year. Fallon Sherrock's average was, I think it was about half a point less, 84, and she didn't get very close to it. And it's all about, as we say it in every tournament, the timing, the consistency, getting the right shots at the right times. If she can do that over the next 7 days, I think she's got a real shot at getting that tour card. And just lastly, going back to last year's Q School, we saw John Worsley win his tour card on the UK Q School with an 85 average, and his average really did fluctuate from 79 one game to 98 the next game, because we do see a varying level of ability in this Q School. It is about pulling off those averages when you need them against the top players, and if she can do that like she's done on the stage, she's got a real shot. But I'm not quite ready to say or back her to get a tour card. I want to see what she can do in these first 3 days in the first stage. If she looks like she's playing well and she takes that confidence right into the final stage, which for her will start the next day, then I think she's got a shot. But I think it is a little bit early to say, given what we've seen in the past from her at Q School.
Yeah, I do think she is going to win it, but it's going to be tough and it's going to be close, and it is going to be very difficult to say so with any level of confidence. And it's not because she isn't good enough or I have doubts about whether she's good enough, but it's because it's so difficult to predict who comes through Q School. If we go back to our first episode or our second episode ahead of Q School 5 years ago, Actually, I think it was one of our first episodes. It's possible that it was on our practice episode that we did, just depending on when Q School was and when we did our first episode. I have to go back and listen. I remember saying that my top tip to get through Q School was Mickey Mansell. And I ended up being right, but just barely. He came in 8th out of the 12 order of merit qualifiers that year, and that was the last year before they went to separate UK and European Q schools. And I was very confident that he would win back his tour card because he was playing really well at the back end of the year. And even though I was right, it was just barely. And that was my number one tip. And I don't remember who my number one tips were in the 4 years since then, but I'm going to guess most of them didn't win their tour cards. Glenn Durant, I know, was my number one tip 3 years ago. He also just barely managed to get through, as I said on the last question. So while I'm saying, yes, I think Fallon will win it, it's not with any level of confidence because of how difficult it is to win a tour card. That said, the change that we saw last year to the 2 stages did seem to help out the better players because the points reset after the first stage. And if you get through that first stage, almost everyone, especially last year at the UK, less so at the European Q School because there were fewer players and there were some people who just got a point or two and got through that first stage who might not have had a real chance to win a tour card, but almost everyone at that second stage is good enough to win a tour card on their day. And taking out from the calculus all those players who aren't gives the better players an advantage. And if Fallon Sherritt can do enough in the first stage to get to the second stage, which as long as the draws aren't so harsh and as long as she plays anywhere near the level that she should be playing at, she will get through that first stage. It then puts her in the second stage where we know from what we've seen that she can get the results she needs. And I think if she gets there, it will get her over the line and will get her a tour card because I think she is one of the 10 or 12 best players right now appearing at Q School. But I can't say so with any level of confidence just because of how difficult it is to predict Q School. So yes, I think she will, even if she doesn't bring her stage game, her floor game is pretty darn good as well. She averaged well into the 90s in many of her matches at the ladies or women's series last year. So yeah, I think she will win a tour card, but I'm not going to guarantee it like I guaranteed on the last show that Michael Smith will win his second major title this year. I think Fallon will win a tour card, but it's a very low level of confidence.
Well, we're going to get on to some of our tips for both the UK and European Q School in a moment. But first, let's hear from our first guest on the show. Here's our chat with the former champion of the world and the player that's making his debut at Q School this week. Here's our chat with Jelle Klaasen.
I'm joined today by the former Lakeside champion of the world, Jelle Klaasen. Jelle, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
And thanks for joining us. We're talking just a couple days before you make the trip to Germany to play in Q School for the first time. How are you feeling ahead of what is an important week for your career?
I'm feeling pretty good. It's not like that I had a bad year if you look at how I played. It's just the results weren't there, but I think average-wise I played a lot better than a few people who play in the world. So I was just a little bit unlucky with the draw and didn't win matches that I should have won, missing match starts and stuff like that.
So you mentioned that we'll come to a couple of those matches in a bit. We had you on the show, though, back in June, and you said your focus was getting back to Ali Pali. How disappointing was it to miss out again, especially fairly narrowly in the end?
It was very disappointing because I wasn't playing bad. If you have a really bad year with your performance, if you look at the averages, then you know you have to practice hard and put more effort into it. But I did all those things and I didn't play bad. I had a lot of high 90 average, but losing to people who were playing way better. And I know that I shouldn't look at other games, but if you lose with a 98, 99 average and you see other players win 2 or 3 games with an 83 average, it's so frustrating. And it's a stupid thing to do, I know. But as soon as I'm out of the tournament, I go back to the hotel room and on Darts Connect, I watch all the games because I just love darts. And then you see the other results and the averages, and then it's frustrating that with playing better than most people, you don't get the results, but the only thing that counts are the results, and I didn't have enough good results.
Now, at the end of the year, though, you had a few of them, making a quarterfinal on the Pro Tour. You said high 90s average. You actually had a 102 against Michael Smith in that match. Also made the semifinals of the Western European qualifier. How much confidence did you take out of those performances at the end of the year?
I was very confident. Even the last Pro Tour, I thought if I make a quarterfinal again, I could have done enough to qualify for Ali Pali, but I didn't have a very good draw. I drew James Wade first round, and I was looking at his games from the 2 previous days, and I think his highest average was 85. And against me, he averaged 107. So that's the luck I was getting the whole year. People playing bad, but against me, they played their best game. And I know my kind of play style is good for everyone because I don't do any tricks. I just play and get the darts out of the board so everyone can play their game against me. They don't have to adjust. They just can play their own game. So they always play well against me. And I know that, but sometimes it's frustrating if you play well but don't get the results.
Of course, that loss to Wade, coupled with some other results, meant you dropped out of the top 64 for the Players' Championship final. But you got a late call-up, returning to play in front of fans in Minehead. What was it like playing in front of a crowd again?
It was the first couple of legs. It was strange because I think the last time I played in front of a crowd was the UK Open the year before, so almost 2 years before I played in Minehead. So I had to get used to the stage a little bit. I went 3-1 down, should have been 2-0, went 4-3 up, then missed I think 5 darts for 5-3. Vincent made 4-0. I missed 3 darts I think for 5-4. And then the last leg, he had a good leg, but I should have won that game pretty easy, if I have to be honest. And he said after the game as well, yeah, you missed too many doubles. But yeah, it was nice to be on stage again. So it's a good motivation for Q School and for next year.
And we last spoke to you. You said that the restrictions were starting to ease in the Netherlands and you were looking forward to playing more local darts again. Did you manage to get much in before the restrictions all came back?
A little bit. I played a couple of local tournaments and I felt way better after playing those tournaments because I was winning the tournaments, getting a little bit more confident and taking that into the Pro Tours. But yeah, soon after that, the restrictions started again. So yeah, it's all practicing at home now.
Now, we may not have seen you at Ali Pali last month, but Dutch fans still saw you as part of the RTL 7 team for their coverage of the event. I believe it was the last event on RTL 7 before darts moves to another channel. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the new channel, Viaplay, starts in March. So everything else will be broadcasted on RTL until that time, I think. But I'm not sure who does the commentary and stuff like that. But I think until March, they still broadcast it on RTL.
So since it's going to go on to a streaming platform, Viaplay, how much of an impact do you think that will have on darts in the Netherlands and no longer being on RTL 7?
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people were afraid that we wouldn't have that much people watching, but I think that everyone thought it would be very expensive, but what I've heard, it's not expensive at all. And we've got a lot of football and Formula One fans in Holland, and they will broadcast it through Viaplay as well. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be a big impact because I think a lot of people will buy a subscription for Viaplay and still watch the darts and all the other sports. So I think it's going to be something new, but doesn't have to be something bad. I think it could be something good.
And then looking back on your days doing the coverage or helping out in the coverage for the RTL 7, what memories will you most fondly have of covering darts for them?
Oh, yeah, I've been doing that for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Whenever I'm not at the TV tournament, so it's nice. I love darts. I love playing darts, and sometimes it's nice to talk about darts. So I see it more as a hobby, just be watching the TV tournaments, the majors, and just talk about the games and how people are playing. So if I think they still are looking for commentary, people for the commentary on Fireplay. So hopefully, if I don't play the tournaments, I will still be doing that. But we have to wait and see what Fireplay is going to do.
Of course, and looking back at the World Championships, obviously it was a shame to see 3 players have to pull out with positive COVID tests, and especially 2 Dutch players, MVG and Vincent, as well as Raymond van Barneveld and Danny Noppert after they lost testing positive. What did you make of it all?
Yeah, it's always a risk if you don't have a bubble, and there are a lot of people in the country who are getting infected by the virus. If you don't stay in your room and you go out for food or go in the hotel and stay with a few people, you got a bigger risk. So I think, for all players, it was their own responsibility, and maybe some players didn't handle it as good as others. And I think some players were maybe unlucky. You never know. Some people, like Dirk van Duivenbode, he was with Michael and Vincent having Christmas dinner, but he didn't get infected. So you never know what the reason is. They got infected, where they got infected. But yeah, it's for us Dutch people, it's a shame that it happened to 2 Dutch players who were still in the tournament.
Now back over to you. It's Q School next for you. It's been around 6 weeks since the PDPA qualifiers for Worlds. How have you spent those 6 weeks preparation-wise for Q School?
I've been practicing a lot. You know me. I'm always suffering small injuries, so it's always tough to stay fit regarding the injuries. But the last few weeks I'm feeling great. Practicing is going well, so I'm looking forward. I'm feeling confident, so can't wait to play on Q School.
As a player who's been in the Premier League top 10 in the world, how hard has it been not having a tour card these last 6 weeks, knowing that you've got to go to Q School to win it back?
I think for everyone who know they can play well and can get higher on the rankings, it's more frustrating because you've been there. But it's also I also feel confident because I've been there. I know how to do it. I came back from I think I was number 48 and I went to number 7 in the world. Was unlucky that I got tendonitis and the wrist surgery that made me drop out of the top 10. But I know with hard work I can get there again. It's not how much people are believing in you. It's how much you believe in yourself, and I still believe in myself. So I will work very hard to get back where I think I belong.
Of course, and just a couple more questions. With this being your first time at Q School, have you spoken to any other players about it? Seek advice on what to expect?
No. The only thing I want to do is play well the first day. Hopefully, if I play well enough to qualify the first day and don't have to think about anything else. But there are 4 days to qualify, and there's a ranking, so I'm not going to think about it too much. I'm just going to play. I'm gonna try to play my best, and if I play my best, it's good enough. And if I'm not playing my best, I hope it's good enough to win on one day or get high enough in the rankings. But I know how I'm playing, and I think if I just play my game how I'm playing lately, it should be good enough.
And the goal, of course, is to win back your tour card. Assuming you are successful, do you feel like this could be a fresh start of a run up the rankings for you?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of people were saying in the last few months, "Oh, what if you don't keep your tour card? You have to go to Q School." And I said, to be fair, if I would have kept my tour card, great. But then you have to fight for another year to keep it. If I don't keep my tour card, I go to Q School and try to qualify, and then 2 years I don't have to think about anything. So I think for me personally, at the moment, it's better not to think about anything and just start over. So no, I'm looking forward to climbing in the rankings again and having a fresh start.
And lastly, in the group stage of the Champions League, Ajax 6 played, won all 6 matches. Is this the year that Ajax finally taste European glory for the 5th time?
It should be. I think they're playing well enough to win it. If you look at the local competition in the Netherlands, they aren't playing as well as in the Champions League. But at the moment, I think Champions League is the most important for Ajax. And if they just keep on playing like they're playing, very offensive, and just the way everybody loves to watch football, the way Ajax plays, I think they've got a good chance to win it this year.
Well, Jelle, thank you so much, and best of luck at Q School.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks to Jelle for joining us. Now on to our tips, and we're going to start off with the UK Q School entry list. Firstly, who are you most looking forward to following, and give us 3 names that you're backing to come through and get tour cards.
One of the names I'm going to say is an answer to both questions. And I'll also add that for both this and the next questions, we'll do the same for the EU Q School in just a second. I'm going to try to pick one player who's going to enter at the second stage and 2 players who enter the first stage. So I'm giving myself a little bit of a handicap by picking 2 players at each one that will need to not just win a tour card, but first get to that second stage in order to have a chance to win a tour card. But to answer the first part of the question, who am I most looking forward to following at the UK Q School? I have to go with the North Americans, and particularly with Danny Lauby, because what we've seen from him in the limited amount of time we've seen him is the potential for a future star, and a star that the United States hasn't had in, well, a few decades in darts. Larry Butler obviously was the first ever world match play champion, and 6 years ago he also made it to the finals of the World Masters before losing out to Glenn Durrant pretty handily in that final. It actually was a match. I think it was 7-3, but it actually wasn't that close. Durrant was clearly the better player in that match. But other than that, there hasn't been an American finalist, even American on tour, I should say, since the tour cards came into play until this past year. Yes, Stacey Bromberg had a card after she won the Women's World Championship, but she didn't really play the tour. She played a few events. Last year was the first time there was an American tour card holder since then. But Danny Lauby seems to be that player who can take it to the next level. The other American at Q School, of course, Leonard Gates, has the best A game of any American. He can throw in 105, 110 averages for fun. The problem that, from what I've always seen from him, whether it's on the North American circuit, whether it's playing the qualifiers for the World Series event, is that he'll follow that with a match in the 70s. The consistency hasn't been there. If he can get that consistency, he can be really good. I want to see him string together matches and get more of a B game. But I'm curious to see how he does as he gives Q School another go. And then, of course, John Part, the Canadian. Don't know if our listeners know that much about him. He's only won a few world titles, Las Vegas Desert Classic, done some commentary for Sky or something. Decent player, but I'm curious to see how those 3 North Americans get on. As for who I'm going to tip to go through, as I said, I'm going to pick 2 from the first stage, and one of those is the American Danny Lauby. I think he's going to win his tour card this year. If he doesn't, he will eventually. He will be on tour one day, and I think he has every chance that he'll be on tour to stay, because I think he has a heap of potential. But I think he gets his tour card this year. Also going to go Robert Thornton. Thornton is really improved after struggling and falling off the tour. We've seen glimpses that he's getting back to his best. I think playing the first stage of Q School is actually a good thing for him, because I think it'll let him get a few wins under his belt. I would be very surprised if he doesn't get through the first stage. And I think the confidence he'll take from the first stage will be enough for him to get a tour card. And of those players who are entering at the second stage, which are the players who were near the top of the Challenger Development Tour, as well as the recent tour card holders who lost their card, except for Justin Pipe, who didn't enter. I'll go James Wilson to win it back. He had the highest average of the players who didn't qualify by right to the World Championship. He made amends for that by winning through the PDPA qualifier. The only thing he wasn't getting is results. I think, though, the performances are there. Obviously, he's going to have taken confidence from getting through the PDPA qualifier, and I think we'll see him bounce back at the first attempt.
Well, I'll start with the players that I'm most looking forward to following, and you mentioned a few of them. Of course, it goes without saying that the top two ladies players in the game right now, Fallon Sherrick, Lisa Ashton. Lisa trying to win back her tour card, Fallon trying to win it for the first time. This time next week, we could have two female players as tour card holders, maybe even more. We don't know yet. We don't know the answers to that, but I'm looking forward to following both of them and seeing how they get on. Of course, John Part, who's now a part of Loxley Darts, signed for them a few months ago. Didn't see him at Q School last year because of the travel restrictions and health. He decided to give it a miss, so he's back involved again. And even if he doesn't get his tour card, we will see him on the big stage next month for the World Seniors Championship. So regardless, we are going to see the Sky Sports commentator, more often known as a three-time world champion, on that big stage very, very soon. And a few others I'll give a mention to, players that we probably didn't expect to see ever at Q School. Paul Hogan, the amateur professional, or the other way around, I can't remember, but I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on. And Ross Montgomery as well, someone who I didn't think I'd see at Q School. He's one of the top seeds for Lakeside in a few months' time. He's obviously feeling confident about his game. He wants to give Q School a crack. Of course, got to mention Aaron Beanie as well. 2 years ago, it was the iconic Pierre Cardin polo shirt picture with him getting that tour card without the first stage or the second stage. Won it outright on one of those days, which was great to see. Going to be following him, and fingers crossed we'll see him get that tour card back. As far as my 3 tips that I'm going to give from the UK Q School, you went with 2 players from the first stage, 1 from the second. I'm going to flip it round and go with 2 that are entering the second stage, 1 from the first, but went with 2 players that have previously had a tour card. I'm going to go with 3 players that have never had a tour card before. The first of those is Chaz Barstow. He had a 91 average at Q School last year, and we touched on Danny Baggish, his late run to getting that tour card on the final day. The player that missed out because of that was Chaz Barstow, but he put that disappointment to one side and look at the year that he had in 2021, picked up some scalps on the Pro Tour, qualified for the World Championship without having a tour card, which is a very hard thing to do. And he was the only player to win a set against Michael Van Goen at the World Championship just gone, and for reasons that we know, but it's he definitely did push him in that game. So I think Chaz has got a shout, and I was a bit surprised that he's entering at the first stage, but that is, of course, because he didn't have a great Challenge Tour. I know he had a lot of success in the other tours last year, but Challenge Tour didn't go his way, so he's going to be coming through that first stage, which is what he did last year and came very close. So Chaz is my number 1. Number 2, a player that we didn't see at Q School last year because of the sad loss of his father just before, Nathan Rafferty. What he's done in the last few months, getting to the Grand Slam, getting to the last 16, picking up a few wins there, got to the World Youth Championship final, was the runner-up on the UK Development Tour. He looks like he's ready to have that tour card, I think, so he's going to be my number 2 pick. And my number 3 pick, a player that lost out to Aaron Beanie in that final, one of the days of Q School 2 years ago. I think he had match starts in that game as well. I'm going with Jared Cole, and I'm going to touch on it in my next answer as well. But one of the reasons is, even if he doesn't get a tour card, the amount of opportunities he's going to have in 2022, I think he's going into this Q School with not a lot of pressure on his shoulders, because there's a lot for him to do in 2022. He's got that game with Martin Adams at Lakeside in the WDF World Championship. He was the MAD Global Champion. He's now the ADC Global Champion after they had their rebrand. Development Tour, Challenge Tour. There's a lot of darts for Jared Cole to play still this year without having a tour card, but I'm backing him to get his tour card.
Good tips, those. Not as good as mine, but good nonetheless. Now, same question for the European Q School. Who are you most looking forward to following? And can you give us 3 names that you're backing to come through?
It would have been a bit like Mark Walsh in the UK Q School. He's got to be Ko Stompy, but he's not entered, has he? He's decided not to. We had our fun with him in the Lakeside qualifiers last month when he got through the first round and lost in the second round, but hopefully we're going to see him back very soon. He's not in the field for Q School this year, but there are a lot of names to look forward to, aren't there? And some of the names I'll give a mention to, and one that we've not seen a lot from in the last 2 years, that is Cristo Reyes. We did see him play one of the international qualifiers in the World Championship qualifiers in the last few months. It was good to see him back involved again, and as he's entered Q School, I think it means that he's ready to get back on the tour and start playing again, because I think if he had played on the tour for the last 2 years during the pandemic, I don't think he'd be going to Q School, because I think he would be in that top 64. We've seen what he can do. That highest losing average that he had at the World Championship, it didn't last very long, but he still averaged quite a big average in a game on that Ali Pali stage. So he's a player that's got a lot of potential. He's got a high ceiling for me. So good to see him back involved and back at Q School. So he's definitely one I'm going to be watching. Players that we saw at the World Championship just gone, the likes of Chris Landman and Roman Beneke, who's just signed up with Mac Elkin at the Sportsman Management Company, and Christian Kist as well. It's always nice to see him playing again, and hopefully he will be injury free and have a good shot at getting that tour card. And then a few other names that we have to mention, don't we? Mario van den Bogarde, Benyamin Simeonidis, two players that we always like to follow as well. But as far as the players that I'm backing to get their tour cards, starting off with, my number one pick is going to be Kevin Doots, who is a player that I backed a few months ago. Didn't quite happen for me on that occasion. We were talking about players to get through to the World Championship, Players Championship finals, those last few Pro Tours. Didn't happen for him on that occasion, but take nothing away from what he did in 2021. He had a 92 average on the Players Championship Tour without that tour card, won a title on the Challenge Tour, won a title on the Development Tour. He had the second highest average from the players that didn't win a tour card at Q School last year. And I think he's got the potential to get that tour card this time round. Number two for me is going to be Roby John Rodriguez, and it's an easy pick, isn't it, because of what he did last year. But he's the 1-4 favourite with Sky Bet out of all the players in Q School to get their tour card. And he came close last year at Q School. He was third on the European Challenge Tour, which was won pretty comfortably in the end by Matt Campbell. But he was so close on the overall order of merit in the PDC, 65th, and he banked 46.5 grand without a tour card in ranking events on the main tour. He had a 97 average at Ali Pali in the first round, got to a World Cup final. He's too good not to have a tour card, isn't he? So I think he's going to get that tour card and join his younger brother, Rusty Jake, on the tour this year. My third pick, a little bit like Jared Cole, I'm going to go with a player that has still got a lot to do this year if he doesn't get a tour card, but I think he will miss out on those opportunities because he's going to be in the tour, and that is Brian Rahman. I think if he can put it all together, he has got a shot at getting that tour card. He is the WDF number one. He will be the top seed for Lakeside if he doesn't quite make it this week. But I think he's going in, like I said, with Jared, with a lot of freedom, and we've seen him come through the England Open a few months ago, which is a large field, a large floor event, come through that and win it. He is capable of averaging in the 95s, the 100s, also capable of averaging in the high 70s, low 80s. So it is all about if he can put it together for the next week. But I think this is his time. I think Brian Rahman is ready to get that tour card, and he's going to be my third pick.
For a little while there, I thought you had Dolan taking a look at my notes ahead of it. Normally it's the other way around on a question like this. Yeah. This time you taking everything I was going to say. But yeah, for the players I wanted to see, you mentioned pretty much everyone on my list for one or the other. But I'll mention as well, you've seen in the first stage of the European Q School, the top two seeds at the Lakeside as things currently stand. Brian Rahman, who you're tipping to get a card, as well as the Frenchman, Thibaut Tricol, would be the first Frenchman to compete in any steel tip darts world championship, man or women's. Of course, yeah, he's competed in quite a few soft tip. I'm curious to see how both he and Rahman get on as they give Q School a go. And obviously will be coming in with confidence because, well, they were able to get the results all year long to be able to be the top two seeds for the WDF World Championship. Also looking forward, as you said, to seeing Cristo Reyes' return. You go back 4 years ago, he was not just in the top 32 in the world, but he was in the top 16 of the Pro Tour order merit. He was seeded to a bunch of European tours and kept running into Michael Van Geuren in the last 16 and losing out in tight matches as Van Geuren went on to win the title, just as he did in that match you mentioned at the World Championship. He is a quality competitor, Reyes, and maybe the break will do him a bit of good. It's a 2-year break. Maybe it won't. We'll see how he comes in. But I'm not tipping him because we just don't know what form he's in, but I'm looking forward to seeing him get back. And I'm also looking forward to seeing the other two Spaniards who'll be entering at that second stage as well, Jose Justicia and Antonio Alcaraz. Alcaraz, of course, former World Championship last 16, Pro Tour player on and off for more than a decade now, and Justicia has had some good results in his time in the Pro Tour a few years ago. So looking forward to all of them, as well as Kevin Dotes, who you mentioned. As far as my 3 tips to win a tour card, I wanted to say Dotes, but I'm sticking to the rule of 1 entering at the second stage, 2 entering at the first stage. And like you, of the players entering at the second stage, you can't not say Robbie John Rodriguez. You can't not say him for the same reasons that you did say him, because he nearly won a tour card just based on 1 year's worth of performances playing without a tour card. And he nearly won a tour card through the Challenge Tour to merit. And the year he had deserves a tour card. The results deserve a tour card. It's amazing he doesn't have a tour card, but that will only be amazing for a few more days because I think he's going to win one. I think he's going to win one outright. He is the class of this field. Of the 2 players that I'm going to tip that are entering at the first stage, I'll go one who's never won a tour card and a bit of a dark horse, but did make 5 quarterfinals on the Challenge Tour this past year, and we've seen him a few times on the European Tour. Ricardo Pietreko didn't do all that well at Q School last year, but made up for it on the Challenge Tour. And I think I just have that feeling there's always 1 or 2 players that come a little bit out of the blue. I don't know how much out of the blue he can be with 5 quarterfinals on the Challenge Tour. Never went further than that, which is why he's entering at the first stage. If he turn 1 or 2 of those quarterfinals into a run to the final on a given day, he would be entering at the second stage. But he's entering at the first stage. His game is getting slightly better each year. And I just have that feeling that this year he'll turn that into a tour card. And I'll go with one former tour card holder, was once in the Premier League conversation not that long ago, but just fell off a cliff. His game has been patchy for a few years, but maybe his time to get back on tour is right. Still young, still a winner of 3 Pro Tour events. I'm going to go Benito van de Pas to get back on tour this year. So those are my 3, Robbie John Rodriguez, Ricardo Pietreko, and Benito van de Pas.
Some nice picks. Let's see how we get on. We'll be discussing that on the next episode. Well, we've got a listener questions to come, but first let's hear from our next guest. It is the India number 1. Here's our chat with Nitin Kumar. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the 3-time World Championship qualifier Nitin Kumar. Thanks for the time, Nitin. How are you doing?
Hey Alex, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And we're now only 5 days away from the start of Q School. It's going to be your first appearance in 3 years in the event. How are you feeling ahead of your return to Q School?
Feeling all right. I mean, just been practicing. I mean, it's, of course, the last few years has been hard for everyone. So it's not like I'm the odd one out, but it's the only thing that I've been working on for the last year. And the Indian qualifier was something that I didn't expect to happen. So it was sort of like a bonus that just came in the way. But yeah, the whole practice and everything that I was leading up to was Q School. So I'm getting ready. Yeah, I'm here. I'm ready for it.
Well, we'll come back to Q School a bit later, but let's first rewind back to when we last had you on our show 2 years ago, just before your second World Championship appearance. How did you find it second time round at Ali Pali?
Second time was against Brendan. It was wonderful. I mean, I was lucky enough to go 2 years in a row. So the year before that, the experience from that, the stage and all was pretty fresh. So it was a little more easier for me to get accustomed to it. I was able to go to the UK as well around a week earlier, so I was sort of ready to play, and I think the results showed I did do much better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, although you didn't win, the improvement from your debut to your second appearance was very noticeable, a 77 average up to a 90 average. Were you pleased with how you improved on the year before?
I was definitely pleased. Still feel I could have done better, but that's what you go there for. No game is a gimme, and if you don't do your best, you're most assured of getting thrashed. And even if you do your best, you're most likely assured of getting thrashed. That's the standard. So I'm just happy I did well, and I didn't screw up, as they say.
Well, shortly after that, the world shut down with the pandemic in 2020 and into 2021. How have things been for you living in Dubai?
I'm sort of lucky, I would say, yes, that Dubai sort of adopted all the healthcare and procedures and everything pretty fast, and we're sort of safe here. In that way, yes, I'm kind of lucky. But of course, I mean, if you're a darts player, you want to play as much as you can, and that's sort of, taking a standstill. There's just only so much you can handle by just practicing yourself at home on the board. So, yeah, that's the problem.
Well, in 2020, we saw Amit Gilotwala represent India at Ali Pali. We spoke to him before he played, and I know you weren't particularly pleased with the process of how the India spot was determined, were you?
Nah, not at all. I mean, I still do have that sort of thing towards them, but all's fair. At the end of the day, I still support the chap. He's a nice guy. I'm sure that he did do his best. My fight, whatever quarrels, arguments, is not at all with him. I'm sure that whatever happens, he gave his best, and I'm just happy that he did whatever he could. No problem.
Of course, and following you on Twitter, I remember you saying in September that there were no qualified details had been announced yet for the Indian qualifier. Was there a fear that there wouldn't be a qualifier?
Yes, I was very sure that nothing was happening, just because the PDC Asia had already announced the qualifiers that were going to happen in Japan and Hong Kong, and the Philippines qualifier happened months before that. So it was sort of tight. I did know, of course, that December you'd have your tournament, the World Championships. You would require around a month and a half at times, because it is a little difficult for most of us Indians to actually get the UK visa right away. There is a lot of processing time that happens. COVID also was another issue that were lengthening all the processes. So I did know that it would be really hard if a person in India did. If the qualifier did happen, it would be really, really tight. And unfortunately, that's what happened. It was very tight.
When the details did come out for that qualifier, how challenging was it for you to get over to Surat in India for the qualifier? Were there any restrictions at all?
No, not that many restrictions at all. I mean, just the regular PCR and everything. That wasn't an issue at all. It was just once that happened, coming back here and then applying for the visa and the processing time, and because lots of things were just slow. I mean, a normal 20-day visa procedure for me took close to a month, little more than a month, and I literally got my visa a day before I traveled to the UK for a match.
Well, talk us through the qualifier. You had previously won it before, but how tough was it this time round?
Honestly, it wasn't. In all fair game. I mean, I love and respect all the boys in India and all, and I do know they're giving their best. It wasn't that hard. Mainly, I think, just because this is all that I've been practicing for the whole year. While most of them, of course, in India, it's a totally different scenario, different issue with COVID. Over there, it's literally life and death, and that's how it is. And I honestly feel really scared even going there, unfortunately, because I'm kind of spoiled in Dubai, I would say.
Well, you mentioned on Twitter as well about the travel visa restrictions you went through to get to Ali Pali last month. We obviously spoke about it a little bit off there as well. You even got ready to withdraw from the event at one point. How did it all come together at the last minute so you could go?
Of course, getting to London, I had, of course, the last flight that was leaving from Dubai, say, early afternoon, and by then, I mean, 3 hours to 4 hours before that flight, I didn't have my passport in my hand yet at that time with the visa stamped. So my whole issue was, if I don't have my visa stamped, I won't be able to travel, of course, no matter what happens. So I was just lucky enough that I had written my withdrawal letter, and I had actually told the PDC that, you know what, if you can give me maybe time till around 3 hours before my flight, if I don't have my passport by then you can go ahead with my withdrawal. And I was just lucky enough that I got my passport 3 hours before, and I just picked up my darts and passport and just ran to the airport. That's it. That's all I did.
Yeah, it was great to see you get that sorted and be able to come over. But how difficult was it preparing for the World Championship while having all of that going on in the background, thinking at one point you would play and then the last minute being able to play?
It was really hard. I mean, physically, of course, I can handle a lot more, but mentally, that was the issue. I just trying, sort of like grappling with, I don't know, I don't even think I'm going to what's the use of all this practice I've put in to, just sitting and I don't know. I think 2 days before the flight, I was very sure that I would not be getting my passport, and I was sort of like already thinking, all right, let me just get an account on PDC TV and actually start watching the matches from here. That's what I actually was contemplating. So it was quite hard, and it was pretty evident with how I looked on stage. Actually, I didn't even have time for a haircut.
I remember when we last spoke, you said playing at Ali Pali gave you shivers down your spine, and nothing could prepare you for the experience. What was it like, though, playing on that opening night again, your third time round?
Pressure was not there. That at least I can say for sure. There was no pressure. I guess I just I actually wasn't ready for the weather. To be fair, because I'm sitting here in 30-35 degrees while I come over there and it's 11-12. So since I arrived just the night before, I wasn't ready for that, which was something that took me a little while. Whenever you play on stage, the lights are hot. During your break, you go to the players' room and there's just a small, maybe 40-50 meters area where you walk through, and that's cold. And whenever I come back on stage, it'll at least take 2 minutes for my fingers to start getting warm enough to throw. And by then, I think you've already lost a leg. And considering I was playing Ricky, I lost 2 legs already.
Yeah, he's pretty quick, isn't he?
Amazing player.
Well, as we touched on, you're back at Q School later this week, and it sounded like from what you said earlier, that Q School 2022 has been on the cards for quite a while now.
Yes, I wanted to come to Q School last year, of course, and because of the quarantine timings and all, I couldn't actually be there. This year, there's no quarantine. I'm definitely there, 100%.
Glad to hear it. And we have to mention as well the news which broke earlier today that you've signed up with Winmau as your new manufacturer. Talk us through how that came about and how much you're looking forward to working with them.
I've always loved a couple of. I'm not going to be all amazed by some of the brands. I love all. To be honest, I love all the brands. I love Target. I've always been with them. I've loved Winmau ever since Michael Van Goven started playing with them. Before that, I used to love Simon Whitlock. I love Red Dragon. All these guys, and it's just looking at how Winmau have kept being on top for such a long time with the players that they have, the products that they have. I love their darts. It's been quite a while where. Of course, I was with Target before, and I love the brand. But the support that I am getting from Winmau right now, it's really wonderful. Considering the last year that we have all had, I think it's nice, and it's a fresh start to this year, starting with Q School, and this is wonderful. 2022 has started out well.
Definitely, and as I said, it got announced today when we're talking, but have you had a chance to work with the guys at Winmau yet, or before Q School, or is that something that's going to happen after Q School?
It will happen after Q School. Yes, I'll start working with them after Q School.
Excellent, and of course the goal is at Q School for all the players to get that tour card. Have you looked beyond Q School yet as far as what 2022, the rest of the year, looks like, or is all the focus at the moment on Q School and seeing how you get on there?
It definitely is on Q School, but I'd be lying if I said no, I didn't want to look at what was going on later on in the year. I did playfully give the schedule to my manager, and he said I'd rather leave my job. So it is sort of weird, but hey, you know what? If Q School goes well and I get a tour card, then I'm prepared to move. Darts has been up there for me in things that I want to achieve in my life, and this is the actual first step that I need to take. Everything starts at Q School, and if I don't go ahead with this, it doesn't make sense. World Championships is fun. It's great to represent your country and be there once a year, but the whole goal is not to be there once a year. I want to be there all the time, and through Q School is where I can achieve that.
Definitely. It's one of the most important weeks of the year for a lot of players all around the world, and to get one of those tour cards. Do you feel like if you were to get a tour card, the next 2 years going up against those top players week in, week out, moving over to the UK would really improve your game and take it to the next level?
Oh, definitely. I'm 100% sure. Yes, it's what I've always wanted, to actually be there and practice with the best and play against the best on a nightly basis. I don't mind the whooping, as they say. I don't mind being thrashed left, right, center. It's all right. I mean, at the end of the day, whatever matches I play, whether I win or lose, I learn from them. And these are some learning experiences that I've been due for quite a while, and I haven't put myself in a good enough position to learn. And for that, I just blame myself, no one else.
Well, fingers crossed those opportunities are going to come your way. We wish you all the best for Q School this week and into next week, and congratulations again on the new deal with Winmau, and all the best for the rest of the year.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thanks a lot. Means a lot. Thank you.
Thanks again to Nitin for joining us, and as I said, we'll finish up the show with a listener question. This one comes from Bill Plaster, who got in touch with us, and he said, what's your views on only being allowed to play the Challenge Tour if you attend Q School? Should the PDC revert back to players being able to pay to become associate members at any time and then the Challenge Tour weekends? And he adds on to the end of that, especially now during the COVID pandemic with cases so high, plus if a player currently has the virus or cannot attend for personal reasons, they have to wait the whole year. Jamie Caven, I believe, did not attend last year under advice of doctors in case he catches COVID. This year, ironically, I believe he currently has COVID and may not be able to attend.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to change the rules during the pandemic. I thought they should have last year as well. And I don't know if they did this year, but I know of at least one player who's had to withdraw from Q School and at least is under the impression that he will be able to play the Challenge Tour this year. I don't know if he's been told that the rules have changed. If you enter but can't attend due to COVID, you'll be allowed to, or if he's under a false impression. That will obviously all be sorted out, and we'll know that fairly soon. But I think that is only fair if a player can't attend, either due to personally having COVID or having to quarantine due to have been in contact with someone, or because they cannot travel for Q School for whatever reason. They're in a place that's under lockdown right now. As long as they've entered and paid the entry fee and don't ask for it back, I think because of the circumstance we're in, they should be allowed to play the Challenge Tour this year. I like, though, the long-term rule that's been in place since, the year after, the year that Rob Cross made his breakthrough. He was able to play the Challenge Tour despite not going to Q School. They changed that the following year. And I like that rule. I like that you need to commit at the beginning of the year to playing it in that way. Who's going to be competing and who's allowed to compete is known from the start. That said, it shouldn't be the case right now because could be plenty of reasons dealing with personal health why someone can't. And of course, there always might be a reason. A player might be having surgery and can't attend Q School. That's unfortunate that happens. And maybe they can apply. There should be a rule that would allow someone at the beginning of the year to apply for a special exemption where they can pay the entry fee but not attend due to illness or health reason. Other than that, I like that you have to compete Q School, but this year, and obviously last year, even though they didn't do it, but at least while this pandemic is going on, having some exception to that rule doesn't just make sense. It is the only sensible and fair path.
First of all, to say thanks to Bill for getting in touch with us. We don't often have listener questions come in via email, but if you guys want to get in touch with us via that, email weeklydartscast@gmail.com, and we'll bring back our listener questions feature from Twitter as well very soon. Looking at last year, we had 640 players. They were all in the bubble, either in the UK Q School or the European Q School. We know that the European Q School this year is still going to be running with a bubble. There's less restrictions on the UK one this year. We look back to last year, we had Boston Parody, our good friend, get in touch with us. We were chatting with Matt Porter on the show, and he asked us to ask about players that couldn't get over to Q School due to the virus and restrictions. And Matt Porter himself, he said it was a difficult situation. How far do you go as far as letting players get involved and play without going to Q School? And he did say that 640 players were able to get over. So there wasn't like there was a huge drop in the numbers for Q School last year. And even this year, we've seen it go up a little bit, despite there still being some restrictions in place and players not quite ready to get back in that environment of playing again. And we have seen that the rules slightly change a little bit since this email come in. I'm just looking at the PDPA website, and it says that any player who tests positive within 10 days of the start of the event, providing they've already registered or once Q School started, they won't be able to play in Q School, but they will be eligible to play on the Challenge Tour for this year. So that is a rule that has come in place for this year's Q School, and they've also followed that on by saying that any player who is deemed a close contact of a player that's tested positive after competing or has been removed from Q School without warning, they will also be allowed to play in the Challenge Tour this year. They won't be able to get their refund, I don't think, for Q School, but they're still going to be able to play in the Challenge Tour, which I think is the right move, considering the amount of cases that we are seeing at the moment. We touched on it in the last few shows with the World Championship, that having a big impact on the biggest event there is, and I'm sure there will be a case of it happening this year, of course, with Diogo Portela, and you were telling me about a player off there as well that's unfortunately not going to be able to play. So I think it's good that they are able to play in it. As far as the associate member thing, I didn't think of that thing with Rob Cross. That's a nice reminder of that, because if the rules had been changed a year earlier, we wouldn't have seen him tear up the Challenge Tour and then a year later get the World Championship. So I think looking back, is probably the right move, considering how many players are entering Q School these days. And if you were to bring back that associate member thing, someone pay a small fee to play on the Challenge Tour, how many players would then not go to Q School? And you think Q School now's £400-500 is a big chunk of money, but you are getting that amount of players do it year in, year out, and it's a good money spinner for the PDC. They want to run as a business. If you take that out, how many players then drop out of Q School? I think there'll be quite a few. So I think it's in their interest to keep the rules as it is. But I think if there was to be a huge drop in the numbers then at Q School, they might look at it and say, well, let's get that associate member fee back in so players can play on the Challenge Tour and get the numbers back up for the Challenge Tour. But I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Now, anything else for this week?
Well, I didn't get a chance to say it on the last show because we didn't know if we'd get him on, but a big thank you to Peter Wright, the new double world champion, for joining us on the last show. Big thanks to Mark Webster as well for his time as well after he finished cleaning up his guinea pigs. Nice for him to come on the show and have a chat. Of course, our two guests on this show as well, Jelle Klaasen, Nitin Kumar, we wish them both the best of luck with Q School, and we wish all the players, all 650 plus of them that are going to be either in Milton Keynes or Niedenhausen for the next week, all the best for Q School this week. I don't think we'll be back with a show next week. We're probably going to see how Q School plays out, but the following few weeks, they're the shows that I most look forward to, getting to share some of those stories from players that have won their tour card. If they're players that we've known a lot from before, players that we've never heard from before, we're looking forward to bringing you some of those stories in the next few episodes. And lastly, just to say, our weekly Dartscast Awards, we've had a lot of people get in touch with their nominations. When you're listening to this, the nominations will have closed, but the good news is that the voting will open today. When you're listening to this on the Sunday, voting will open for the awards, and like last year, all the awards, they are going to be decided by you, the listeners. We're not going to have a say in who wins the awards. We can put forward our nominations, but we can't decide who wins, and that is all down to you. So go and check out our Twitter. There'll be a link on there. Get your votes in. The voting will close sometime around Wednesday, Thursday next week, and then we'll try and get as many of the winners to get in touch with a video accepting the award, and then we'll bring you our results on Sunday next week. Sunday the 16th, we'll have our little awards ceremony on Twitter, so you can find out all the winners of that. So get voting. All the best to everyone who's been nominated, and enjoy Q School, and most importantly, enjoy the darts.
Yes, indeed. And I will have a short sign off this week as I'm running out of energy to speak. I'm sure many of you wish I would stop talking a lot sooner most of the time. But thank you to everyone. Please get your votes in for all of our awards, and let us know what you want us to talk about as we begin our 6th year doing this. I can't believe it goes so quickly. But for Alex Moss, I am Burton DeWitt, thanking you all for listening. Hang tight for a very short amount of time, because Q School is just about to start, just moments away now. You're just going to have to hang tight for a few more seconds.